for me, I'm just curious, always curious, and I have no problem with failing. Like if it sucks, you will forget, and another day will go by. And I think it started with sketching and sketchbooks and grabbing a pen and just acknowledging that that is you and where you are and you can't hide it. That's the pen mark you just made. You could make a choice to make it better, and it's going to come with a lot of time and energy. But flip the page. That happened. You cannot change it. And just accepting it one step at a time. And then if you look back at that sketchbook at the end, there was tremendous growth.
Welcome to the BoldBrush Show, where we believe that fortune favors the bold. Brush. My name is Laura Engelbert, and I'm your host. For those of you who are new to the podcast, we are a podcast that covers art marketing techniques and all sorts of business tips, specifically to help artists learn to better sell their work. We interview artists at all stages of their careers, as well as others who are in careers tied to the art world in order to hear their advice and insights. For today's episode, we sat down with Todd Casey, a fine artist, author, and teacher who embraces a way of living that values creativity, personal expression, and continuous self-improvement. Todd shares his artistic journey from graphic design to atelier training, emphasizing the importance of curiosity as an excellent catalyst for personal growth. He discusses the value of developing both fast and slow painting techniques and the benefits of exploring different mediums and approaches without being constrained by rigid artistic rules. Throughout the conversation, Todd stresses the significance of creating art for personal passion rather than external validation, highlighting that the joy of the creative process is more important than potential fame or financial success. He advises artists to remain open to opportunities, take risks, and focus on their own growth and introspection. Finally, Todd tells us about his upcoming live demo at the Guild of Boston Artists on May 17th, as well as his Patreon, and reminds us to keep up to date by checking out his website and social media. Welcome, Todd, to the BoldBrush Show. How are you today?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to have you because your work is gorgeous. You're an amazing instructor. Your books are awesome. And I mean, if anyone wants to learn how to paint better, I feel like I would 100% recommend your books first, because they are so thorough, so delicious in terms of information. And yeah, so I'm excited to have you, and also because you and I basically studied in one of the the same academy, actually, technically, just different times. So it's really awesome to speak to a fellow alumni of the same school.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So but before we talk more about all of that history side of, like, the school and your work and everything, do you mind telling us about a bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name's Todd Casey, or Todd M. Casey. I added the M in because one time I got Todd Casey's financial aid in
Oh,
undergrad. Yeah, which was cool, that he was getting a lot of money, but then they self-corrected it, and then I didn't get that money. So,
right.
so I don't, so I didn't get into that anymore. I am now Todd M. Casey, which is also what my mom yells at me. The M is for Michael. So nobody ever yells at me as Todd Michael Casey anymore, except for her. Um, I'm a painter, an artist, an author, and a teacher. And yeah, I live in Connecticut with my wife and daughter, and I teach throughout the country, flying to workshops. I teach at Lime Academy in the core program and also in the continuing ed, do a lot of online teaching as well. In the process of writing two more books and trying to think if there's anything else. I like basketball.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of
Yeah, I mean, it's important to have, stuff outside of art that we enjoy because it feeds into it somehow. And it's good to be well-rounded, like a basketball. Haha. But yeah, awesome.
it's fun.
But and of course now, you've had quite a long time, that you've been painting and working and doing all of these awesome things. When did your path of the artist initially begin?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And it's always fascinating to kind of hear people answer that, but I'll do my best. I think it started when I was a kid. I shared a bedroom with my brother Chris, and he's 3.5 years older. And I think he got a little art recognition from my aunt, and I wanted some of that love as well. And I think the two of us just began to do art together. And then from there, I did it well throughout, my whole life, but didn't really take it seriously until I went to college. I went to Mass Art in Boston, and the first one in my family to go to college. And yeah, followed the path of art. Chris actually came with me. I convinced him to go to Mass Art with me, and we started as freshmen, 1997. And we've kind of been in it together. We worked at Ralph Lauren together as graphic designers. We live together. We still keep in touch. He's here in Connecticut as well. Sometimes he'll come by. He didn't have the training, atelier training that you and I both have, but he's fascinated. He's more trained as a graphic designer. And yeah, sometimes he'll come over and he's just like, let's paint. And I'm like, all right, I love it. And we paint.
Oh,
And he's good. He's really good at it.
that's awesome. Yeah, I was actually going to ask if he continued with the arts. So it's really cool that he did because um and also that he went in a different direction from you because, everyone has their own little flavor that they want to pursue. And I know you actually also studied illustration, right?
Yeah, what's interesting is that I grew up loving Norman Rockwell, and that's kind of what I wanted to do. But when you get to undergrad, there's the practical side of, what are you going to do with the thing that you get when you're done? And I actually was going to double major as a graphic designer and illustrator, but was talked out of it. And Chris went into graphic design. I figured I could just pick his brain and learn from him. But ironically, we both worked as graphic designers together at Ralph Lauren. So,
Mhm.
but what's fascinating is that they brought me in because I almost was I was more heavy on being able to paint, and he was more of a true trained graphic designer, and we brought two different skill sets to the the job, which again it was a fun job to do. But yeah, he's kind of been in and out of my life. He still is all the time.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's really cute. It's like a dynamic duo, just working together in the same company. That's really fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then actually, I'm curious then because since you did study illustration, when did you decide like, oh, there's this atelier over here? When did you find out about like the atelier system and then decide to go?
Yeah. I don't want to tell too long of a story, but I'll tell a little bit of a story.
Mhm.
I got trained as an illustrator, and I was like the world's worst illustrator. So I moved home with my parents, and I did all these odd jobs. I was a mailman for a year of my life. I did construction. I was a waiter, 10 other things. And then I moved back to Boston, and then I moved to New York City. I worked as a waiter at the Plaza, and then I got a job at Ralph Lauren, the art department. I was there for about a year and realized I hate the corporate world. It wasn't for me. I don't hate the corporate world. It just wasn't for what I was looking for because I was looking to express myself in the medium of art, and that didn't feel like it was allowing me to. It was doing tasks for other people. So I ended up moving to grad school to the Academy of Art University in San Francisco to get a master's in 3D animation. And I got in, I moved out there. I just got like back when Craigslist was cool. I don't even know if people still use Craigslist. Is it still around?
Yeah, it's still around.
Okay. So I got like an apartment on Craigslist. I think it was like $600 right in the middle of San Francisco. And I just knew it was right next to the animation building that I was going to be in. So I moved there to get a master's in animation, opened up Maya, the program. I was like, I don't want to be a 3D animator. And then I moved to 2D animation. So anyway, I was going for a master's in 2D animation and then realized you had to take all these heads and hands, kind of like Andrew Loomis classes. And in there is when I met Warren Chang, who was a painter. And he said, you sound like you want to be a painter. He was like, we both love Norman Rockwell. We talked about him all the
Mhm.
time. He said, you should go back to New York City and study with like Max Ginsburg and Bert Silverman and Jacob Collins. And I wrote all the names down. I was like, I don't know who any of these people are. And that summer, I went to the Illustration Academy in Florida, and then I moved back in with my parents. I was back in with my parents in Lowell, Massachusetts for like 2 weeks and was bored to tears. I went back to New York City and got a job back at Polo, freelancing, and then started to look into all those names that he had said. And then I had emailed Jacob, and he said, "Come in for an interview." And that's where it kind of began. And I remember just walking in the atelier that day because, it's almost like a speakeasy. Like these things are existing, and you're just like, where do you get beer around here? And nobody's going to tell you unless you go in the random wrong door. I, I just remember walking in there that one time, and like there were 14 people or 12 in front of the model, and they were all friggin' fantastic. And I was like, why am I so late to the party?
Yeah.
And if I could be the worst one in here, I'd be happy. He told me to go do a cast drawing at GCA at the time, and I did it. And 3 months later, I came back, and I thought I was going to get rejected. Made me feel like crap. He told me I was old.
Oh no.
Yeah. And then Nick Hiltner at the time had just left. There were two spots that had opened up, and I got in. So that's how it kind of serendipitously was just following a blissful road of not sure where to go with all this, and then trying them all out, and then, you know, finding it.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, I mean, now you have your books and you have your beautiful work, so it's really cool to see like those turning points in hindsight because it's like, wow, that was actually a key moment in my life where it led me down the path that led me to who and where I am today, right? Like it's really interesting to hear, artists like you talk about their past in that way because for us it's like, oh yeah, inevitably this was going to happen. You were gonna, this was totally going to end up the way that it is now, but in that moment in the past you had absolutely no idea, and I think that's such an interesting
Yeah.
perspective. Yeah.
It sounds linear, but I think it was
Yeah.
Schopenhauer that said, it's not until later on in your life that you can look back at the moments that seemed random that were really the structuring of everything in your life. And Aristotle has a quote that's similar to it too.
Mhm.
Life makes
Mhm.
sense backwards, not forward.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, hindsight is 2020, as they say. Which is really cool. And I love that you it was Warren Chang who told you about it because I've had him on the show and he's such a blast and his paintings are also absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Warren's
He's such
amazing.
a wonderful person. Yeah. Yeah.
He's become a friend now, and he was a student of Max Ginsberg. So he was like, "Oh, you got to look up Max, and you got to look up Jacob." And I think he had painted with Jacob a couple of times in Brooklyn when Water Street was actually on Water Street in
Oh.
Brooklyn.
Mhm.
And yeah, he was kind of like, he was the turning point of like, you should go over here and check this out. And yeah, and here I am, and he's in all my books as not only do I love his work,
Yeah.
he's also like a mentor to me. But yeah, as a look, everybody, his work is beautiful, and we've stayed in touch. I designed his book for him, so one of the other things I did. Yeah,
Oh, that's so sweet. And yeah, his book is, well, his work and his book and everything, he's wonderful. So great job on that. And also, it's awesome that you guys keep in touch because again, he's yeah, his work is mm. But but yeah, that's so fascinating. And actually, that brings me to another question because this is something else that, especially with people like you who have studied illustration and then gone through like the atelier system. And then, there's that period of time after that where it's like, okay, what do I keep and what do I take out of my process? How has your process developed and changed over time after, having studied all of these different ways of pursuing the arts?
yeah. I think every place I've gone to has a strength and a weakness to it, and my purpose in doing all of these things is to find the strength from them all and pull. Um, I don't think any one school is going to give you everything. So illustration allowed me to delve into kind of the idea of telling stories and being narrative with the work, but also working on the process of it. So animation also did that as well. The idea of like sketching all the time. If you were to put yourself up against, not you, but if artists were to put themselves up against like a Disney animator, they can sketch amazing, like so fast. So one of my teachers at the Academy of Art University was Sherry Sinclair, and she had worked at, I think, as a cleanup artist on Mulan, and I was just fascinated at like how she did this one task, I think, of cleanup for line and just making it beautiful and calligraphic. but the ability to just sketch on demand and quickly. So my whole thing with all of this is just been able to extract all the good from everywhere that I go and put them together, and then have a lot of time to reflect and make sure that, I'm on the path that I want to be on, and not that somebody else is kind of, somebody's aesthetic taste has been kind of thrown on me to head towards it.
Yeah.
It's tough because there's no path for that. That's really a lot of downtime and thinking. But yeah, so I think a lot of a lot of each aspect. There's also the Illustration Academy, which I went to, and that's Mark English, Gary Kelly, Sterling Hundley, Anita Kuntz, CF Payne. A lot of I sorry to just throw names out, but a lot of illustrators that have a whole process before they get into making a painting. And I think ateliers are a little bit more backwards, where sometimes they're just mimetic. They're like working from the model, and then they come up with an idea after. And I'm always trying to figure out all the variables of ways to kind of make pictures. And then you have a toolbox that you can kind of pull into. So,
Yeah, and it's really interesting, especially what you mentioned about speed also, because it is really awesome that, especially, in illustration, right? There's that speed, one, because, you're producing something for a client, and it's more from like a business standpoint of like, okay, well, I have a deadline. But with like the atelier system, especially with my experience, it is such a slow process. At least, in the ateliers that I've studied in, there is an emphasis on taking your time, which when one of our instructors with Michael John Angel mentioned it, he was like, these works are unsellable because it takes so much time that if you had to account for like your rent, the cost of schooling, the cost of materials, and the cost of labor for these paintings, it's unsellable. It's thousands of dollars, unless you have, a collector in the future who really wants your student work, which is it's pretty rare that that happens, if at all. It's just gonna sit there, and it's a fun exercise. It's still, useful, and I hear a lot of, people who have gone to academies who later on say, man, I wish I would have enjoyed, my cast a little bit more, because it is actually fun to slow down. But of course, that doesn't it's that balance of like, well, you can't really slow down that much if you're going to live as a painter unless you have a day job or unless you have another means of income, because that's that delicate balance that comes in, which is really interesting to me, because it's, once you're out of the academy, it's like, okay, i gotta I gotta make money now, or have some sort of job while I try to figure out the process that I want to have for my work. Because, like you said, there is a lot of like just working from the model and then doing something with it after. If you're someone who wants more narrative stuff, or you want to do something a little bit more fun, fantastical, or just totally different from the academies, that takes a lot of unlearning, or a lot of exploration, a lot of experimentation, which unfortunately, those are some things that the academies don't necessarily promote in their students, is the experimentation side. So, like, for example, like if someone wanted to improve their technique, right, what would you suggest to them?
yeah, I guess I would technique of what?
Well, in, just learning to paint better.
Oh, paint bitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just say it's all over the place because it depends on where they want to go with it. If
Mhm.
you want to, like, I could see like value or utility in doing like daily paintings. Like if you've never painted, why not jump right in, right? So my whole thing always was like learn how to go really fast and then really slow and find the two poles and then figure out in the middle what overlaps with you, right? And that's where like Jacob was a slow painter, even though he can paint fast. And then Max was a very fast painter who could paint slow. And I was like, I'm going to paint with two of these. And I remember when I went to Jacob, and I said, "Do you know Max Ginsberg?" He said, "Of course I do." And he said, I'm gonna paint with Max." He said, "You shouldn't because you'll probably get confused." And he was completely right. However, I still did it. I just didn't tell Jacob. And Max was like, I would go to the Art Students League and we would just do like 3-hour portraits. every Saturday. And then over at Water Street, we would do 70-hour cast drawing or whatever, 3 months, that kind of stuff. But for me, I was like, I didn't bridge a gap between how to go really fast and really slow yet. It was like also trying to master the materials and understand color and how to make tonal progressions. And there's just too many variables, where like we can totally overthink it at the beginning, but why not jump in and then assess and then figure out which way I want to go? But I was always, let's get these two skill sets so I can go really fast and really slow. It harks back into when I was an animator. So animation was all about fast, fast, fast. And we would go to sketch nights. The Academy of Art University provides free models. You could do like 3 different workshops every night. Some of them were 20-second sketches. Some of them were anatomy workshops. Some of them were like 40-minute poses. 40-minute poses for them was super, super long, right?
Yeah.
So, I just remember I was in a class one day and somebody was like, "Are you going to sketch tonight?" And I didn't know anything about these workshops yet. And I said, "What do you mean?" And one of our goals was to fill a sketchbook in a semester. And I said, "What do you mean? Where are you going to sketch?" And I walked in the room with him that night because I was like interested and realized I was late to that party because there was already like 50 people there sketching. And I was like, how do I not know about this? And then I just used that as fuel and then went every single night to at least one of these, submerging myself and getting really fast at gesture and working with a pen so that I couldn't erase, like to articulate it, right? And it's the same way in which I do it with paint now, which is like, learn how to go really slow, learn how to go really fast, and then you can be economical when you need to. And then the other thing is I get asked a lot, like, how do you loosen up? And it's like, well, there's the quote by, I think it's William Merritt Chase, and he says, it takes 2 artists to paint, one to stand behind with an axe, to cut the arm off before the artist destroys it. And you would watch somebody like Max paint from an abstraction into a naturalistic painting, but Jacobs was a little bit more linear, where you would actually see it progressing. And I thought, I want to have a whole toolbox to just pull from at all times. And if I can do that, then the world's just my oyster to play with.
Wow. Wow. I love what you mentioned about that speed, right? Allowing yourself to experience those two speeds because there is use to it, right? Like I still like pull a little bit from that academic side where it's like you slow down a bit and you like try to rethink, oh, there's something wrong going on here. Maybe I should slow down because I don't, it's a little bit like learning a song, right? Where like when
Exactly.
you're in a difficult part, you have to slow down to get that movement correct between those notes that you're trying to hit, and then you can speed through them. And then, in my opinion, that's where like that loosening up can happen because you've become so proficient at something that you don't need to slow down as much to try to get that stroke in the correct angle, the correct direction, which that can only happen, with the deliberate practice of slowing down a little bit, but then also the extreme practice of speed, right? Which is why I think a lot of people gravitate towards like plein air
Mm-hmm.
because plein air forces you to be fast and it forces you to maybe slow down on some parts, but at the risk and at the consequence of maybe losing information because the sun has just moved and your shadows have just changed. So yeah, I think it's really cool to have come from like those two directions and to have experienced, the that importance of slowing down, but then also speeding up and then back and forth, back and forth. Because so far actually on the podcast, I don't think anyone's ever really mentioned that, having those two attempts at speed. So I think that's really useful information for technique. So that's
You're
insane.
painting out of your head too. I think,
Yeah.
like I keep digging into the French academic tradition to see how
Mm.
much, not fact checking it, but to see how much we actually are following in it. So there are these beautiful sketches that the French academics used to do. It's really what Impressionism came out of, which we call the poster study. But in the École des Beaux-Arts for the Prix de Rome, they would have the students come in, and the first day would be create a composition out of your head. That's what you have to do today. And what you're going to do is you're going to lock into the composition, and then you're going to paint it. and they would do a tracing of the composition to make sure that they didn't deviate from it, but they had a month after to explore it. Now that's a different way of creating a painting than atelier training, which is typically here's a model, they're sitting in front of you, and now what's the background that we're going to put in, right? Or everything is in front of me, I just need to capture it. So the animation illustration side was much more out of your head and then serve your idea than working from life and then coming up with an idea after. Again, I'm not here to say which one is better or worse. It's just here's a toolbox of ideas and play with them all. When you're in your studio, just do either of the two and which one makes the better work.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And you actually just reminded me too of the thing with using pictures and not using pictures, right? Because that's another aspect that's I think really important that ateliers do have is working from life. Having that practice is so important because if you, you know, everything that we see comes from nature, right? We have to learn to observe things to be able to apply them properly in like a realistic setting on a painting. If you want to create the illusion of reality, you have to understand reality. But
Totally.
then, of course, there are some schools of thought that don't like pictures and they think pictures are evil. And it's like, yeah, but like, how else am I going to capture a horse in movement? Like, yeah, I could try to be like Da Vinci and hope that I have eidetic memory and I could just like observe a horse enough times that I can capture it. But there's also, why would I, lose the opportunity of having an images reference for something that's a really challenging pose? Like, I'm not going to torture my model either and have them hold some godforsaken difficult pose, because also models are expensive, right? And not every artist can afford to pay a model for multiple hours of painting time because it takes forever. So of course there's a benefit of pictures, and I feel like illustration with its its use of photography as well, they didn't poo-poo photography. They said, well, photography is useful, and then we can use it as reference, which is the key word there, reference, instead of perfect copying, which it's totally fine if people perfectly copy images. That's another thing that artists can do, and that's fun too. But if you're trying to seek out a different type of work, where it's that beautiful marriage between like something imagined but then also something realistic, then photography can be your friend, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I'm sure you got the same conversations. I started to
Mm-hmm.
put my headphones on because they don't always seem like they're open-minded. They just seem
Yeah.
like they're an aesthetic, dogmatic thing that are put onto an atelier, and you agree with us or you're against us, right? And it's like, well, why don't yeah. Just like I say with everything, the purpose of knowledge is action. It's not just to get the knowledge. It's like go paint from a photo so that you know exactly what they're talking about. And then, do you want it to look like a photo? There's nothing wrong working with photos then. I don't want my work to look like photography. There are times in which I work from life and then I'm like, the flower moved. I'm either gonna, the painting is gonna move with the flower, or I can go back to the photograph. But it gives me a piece of data. Now, these arguments have gone on forever, and there should not be a winner or a loser. There should be your opinion and my opinion. And at the end of the day, the rest of it is who cares? Paint in bliss, and then close the door and do the things you want. If you want to make it look like photography, go for it. I don't think either you or I do, and therefore, we paint from life.
Yeah. 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 And
Illustration, you bring up a good point too with the
mhm.
horse, which is fascinating because you look at a lot of horse paintings prior to, um, oh man, the one who did the
Mhm.
photographs. What's
Yeah.
it?
Oh, I can't remember his name right now, but the one who wanted to prove that all horses, all the four limbs get off the ground when they run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Can't remember
anyway,
right now.
the one that was friends with Eakins.
Yeah.
But you look at horse paintings prior to that, and they were making stuff up, which is now that we have the knowledge of it, just looks kind of silly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, shit, I don't have a horse in my backyard. Sorry for the swear. I don't have a horse in my backyard, so like I don't have access to a horse. And if I
Yeah.
want to paint one, then I'm gonna paint one from a photo. I actually just
Mhm.
took a roll of photos from of horses because I'm like, why don't I come up with my own conclusions rather than to, be holden to anybody else's ideals? If you don't want to do it, don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. it's like how some people like a little spice in their food and some people might not tolerate it, and that's it.
Those
You
are
don't.
other conversations that I'm like, the purity of like the best coffee or something like that. And I'm like,
Mhm.
you bring your own value to the things, and
Yeah.
if you want to do it, you do it. And if somebody tells me that this Starbucks is better than Dunkin' Donuts, just go to Boston and talk to a Bostonian. No, none of them would agree with you.
Hmm.
You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's fleeting arguments that I'm like, I'm gonna go paint. I don't want to
Yeah.
argue with
Exactly.
them.
Oh, totally. I mean, in the end, the best painting or the best, in the case of coffee, the best coffee is the one that you enjoy for you. That's the best one for you. And that's what matters. And then if you like all the coffee, that's awesome. So I agree. I mean, there are, and it's funny because, there are these funny ways that different schools, whether they're illustration schools, academic schools, etc., like to box themselves in,
Hmm.
and it can be a good thing in terms of maintaining maybe quote unquote the purity of something, which I think that's a whole conversation of like, well, what does that even really mean? But then also there's a risk of it not adapting, or even kind of being like an Ouroboros, right, where it's like the snake devouring itself, where it just doesn't
Hmm.
produce anything anymore. And this is actually something that you and I had been talking about before, where like there's the issue of like, are the academic schools of today even truly as academic as the ones from the past, right? There are so many different things that have changed in these systems of how they teach, right? Like you have in newer academies, or like the neo-academic, as I like to call it, the 60-hour pose, whereas, you mentioned, well, theirs were 12 hours and it was only maybe a week. And it's a huge difference. And
Yeah.
The way that they're applied, right? I feel like a lot of academic schools, they teach for the sake of teaching the academic rather than with the end goal of this is something you use and this is something you evolve with, instead of, well, this is point A to point B. Okay, guys, have fun. It's very different. Whereas illustration does give you that expansiveness, so you can do anything with this. Maybe you're not as adept in terms of technique, but hey, you can learn on the go, and that's another way of approaching being an artist.
Yeah, it's by the way, it's Moybridge was the one
Oh,
who had
yeah.
the photography, who slowed it down.
Mhm.
Yeah, look, I'm all for listening to all aspects of things and then picking and choosing what it is that I like from it. But yeah, I mean, every school is correct and incorrect in everything that they teach. It's not dogmatic. There's
Mhm.
a million different roads to Rome, right?
Yep.
So it's whatever one, you should find out where it is you're trying to go with it and the things in which you're trying to do with it, and then continue to learn how to keep learning as well, so you can keep adding and shifting. So
Mhm. Yeah,
photography to
totally.
me is like, yeah, I've totally painted from photographs, and I've painted only from photographs to see what it's like, just so I have my own opinion on it. I've made my own beer. you know, I've grown my own vegetables. I do not make good beer. I can grow vegetables, but it also makes me appreciate all of the things. So come up to your own conclusions. Everybody should, and not just
Yeah.
listen to Facebook and fights and stuff like that. Is like just fleeting, just people trying to waste time. We all
Yeah,
have differing
totally.
opinions, and they should be celebrated. Not we don't have to have the same agreement on everything.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And what matters in the end is, again, like, are you happy with whatever process it is that you're developing for yourself? You are? Cool. You're not? Okay, experiment, find something new and try something new, and reach, like you said, your own conclusions.
Well, the question is the way that you're doing it holding you back, or is it allowing the art, the spirit to be free? And
Hmm.
if it's holding you back, then you should, regroup and look at the methodology. Um, yeah, but look, there's plenty of shortcuts out there, and I think it's human nature to want to take them, rather than how to learn to draw from life. If you draw from life, you work with photographs. If you can't work from life, it's easier to work from photographs, right? And a lot of the time, why I think people do it, they start there. I think you and I both understand that art it kind of goes right back to the first question you had, which is like, when did you become an artist? And I think that I think there's something that we're kind of born with, a desire to make this a passion. It's the way in which I do everything. It's not just the way in which I hold a paintbrush or a pencil. It's the way in which I cook, the way in which I do anything. And it's to stop and smell the roses. And I think it was Robert Henri that said, I'm interested in art as a way of living, not as a way of making a living. Of course, if those two Venn diagrams can come together and I can make some income, fantastic. But at the same time, it doesn't always overlap. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'll just go down a rabbit hole of painting things that I'm like, I don't care if they sell. It makes my heart happy and not just my head.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think, it's really funny how people think, oh, only artists are creative, or only, people in the arts are creative. But creativity is a basic human act, right? It is one of the base ones. It's from the thoughts we have to the food we make to the car we pick or the clothes we wear. That is all creativity based. It is fundamental. We
Problem
just
solving. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's problem solving. It's, man, how do I feel today? Or what music do I want to listen to today? Or creativity just surrounds the human, even the people who think they're the least creative, you know, because it's a base act that we have. So that actually kind of what you mentioned reminded me of the book, The Creative Act by Rick Rubin, where he also discusses that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Uh,
I love all that.
mhm,
The ones that are just they're an artist or creative in a different field. Because you and I were chatting last time. It's like,
mhm.
oh, what podcast do you listen to? And I'm like, I more listen to kind of fringe people that bring another flavor to a way of thinking. Even something like Chef's Table on Netflix, where you
Yeah.
see like chefs that are putting stuff together and they're designing a plate. So when people are asking me how to compose well, I'm like, do it tonight when you make dinner and present it to your loved one. I do that to my wife when I cook. I'm always like, I worked in fine dining. I know what it's like to place something in a beautiful way. It's like a Japanese tea ceremony, like to do something mundane beautifully, to stop and smell the roses. So, Creative Act is a fantastic book. I'm trying to think of
Yeah.
Elizabeth Stewart's, oh, no, Elizabeth Gilbert, is that her name? Big Magic. That's a fantastic book too.
I'm
Yeah,
writing it down.
I love those kind of books. The
Yeah.
Creative Act is fantastic because he gives you these small little, it's almost like the art spirit for
Mhm.
musicians, but
Yeah.
like little nuggets that you can kind of read and it doesn't take your whole time to read it as a book. But
Mhm.
yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. If you've been enjoying the podcast and also want to be able to ask our guests live questions, then you might want to join our monthly BoldBrush Live webinars, where our guest artists discuss marketing tips, share inspiring stories, and answer your burning questions in real time. Whether you're a seasoned painter or just starting a creative journey, this is your chance to connect, learn, and spark new ideas. And whether you're stuck on a canvas or building your creative business, this is where breakthroughs happen. Don't miss out. Ignite your passion and transform your art practice by joining us. Our next BoldBrush live webinar is coming up on May 22nd with our special guest, Sarah Sedgwick. You can find the sign-up link in the show notes. At BoldBrush, we inspire artists to inspire the world because creating art creates magic. And the world is currently in desperate need of magic. BoldBrush provides artists with free art marketing, creativity, and business ideas and information. This show is an example. We also offer written resources, articles, and a free monthly art contest open to all visual artists. We believe that fortune favors the bold brush. And if you believe that too, sign up completely free at boldbrushshow.com. That's BoldBrush show.com. The BoldBrush Show is sponsored by FASO. Now more than ever, it's crucial to have a website when you're an artist, especially if you want to be a professional in your career. Thankfully, with our special link, faso.com/podcast, you can make that come true and also get over 50% off your first year on your artist website. Yes, that's basically the price of 12 lattes in 1 year, which I think is a really great deal considering that you get sleek and beautiful website templates that are also mobile friendly, e commerce, print on demand in certain countries, as well as access to our marketing center that has our brand new art marketing calendar. And the art marketing calendar is something that you won't get with our competitor. The art marketing calendar gives you day by day, step by step guides on what you should be doing today, right now, in order to get your artwork out there and seen by the right eyes so that you can make more sales this year. So, if you want to change your life and actually meet your sales goal this year, then start now by going to our special link, faso.com/podcast. That's FASO.com/podcast. Yeah, it's one of those books where you read a page or two and then you're just deep in thought about it, more than reading to finish the book. It's one of those books you slow digest because it holds a lot of key philosophical things that you bring into a lot of aspects of your life, and that's what we do as artists in general. I mean, it's really funny because it's the whole thing of like everyone's an artist, which is such a funny it's funny when you think about it because artist is a term that can extend to much more than just a painter. And actually, in Spanish, when we refer to someone who's a musician, we also call them an artist, right? In English, also technically too. When you look up, like I don't know if back in the day, you remember, like on iTunes, it says artist, right? And you select the artist. So it is something that spreads out much further than painting. But of course, we have that as our moniker. You could say as, oh yes, I'm an artist. But yeah, it's important also because you mentioned this last time to expand outside of the realm of just art, because there are other aspects of life that can enlighten you in your work, right? Whereas it could be like quantum physics, it could be algebra, it could be biology, right? There are so many things that feed into painting. So
Totally.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, totally. And then I also did want to ask you because you did have this time where you took a bunch of odd jobs, which I feel like that is, one of the things that a lot of artists have to do in order to, work and, have a living and have the economy to be able to become artists and to study and to do all these things. What was it like for you when you were able to jump into becoming a full-time artist? What was that transition like?
Yeah, again, it's hard to say because I think if we just keep if we broaden out, I know I'm gonna give you an answer here, but the thing is, if you just broaden out and if you truly are just an artist, just quote unquote artist in all that you do, you don't stop doing it, right? You're doing it when you're planting your garden. You're doing it when you put stuff on a shelf. You're presenting the food in a beautiful way. You're slowing it down. The things that you do it all the time. Um, you know, there's practical things in life that I was after, which was that my wife and I, when we got married, we wanted a house. And right out of Water Street, I was like, I need to show that I have an income because I don't even think I had to claim because I didn't make money at the time or made not enough to even claim, which is like $15,000.
Mm.
But we wanted a house, and then I took a job back at Polo again because Polo has interweaven in and out of my life throughout my time at Water Street, and I was freelancing even when I was in grad school, which I'm blessed that I had that to be able to work from home for like 10 years. But then I went full time in office, and then again, if you're aware and you're looking around, there's inspiration everywhere. I worked at Ralph Lauren full time in 2011. They had offered me a job because I came in as a painter. My brother was there. My wife was there. My brother and my wife used to do lunch together at Ralph Lauren. She's a graphic designer. But I used to come in as a painter with no idea what to do. And the guy, Tim Holmes, my art director, was like, I love it. You don't have these things holding you back. You know what I mean? Like this design sense that you had to abide by. And my brother would come around and be like, yeah, you're not supposed to do that, but you did it and it works. And I'd be like, I guess I didn't get the memo on that one.
Mhm.
So I worked at Ralph Lauren from 2011 to 2016, and Ralph worked in the building. I used to work with his brother Jerry, and the way in which he puts together narratives was a thing to study. So I was around there all the time looking at the way in which he's putting collections together to tell almost like a sequential story with pictures. So there was the inspiration, the reference, the whole side, just like on animation, that he was putting together collections based off of a concept, an idea, go find vintage, go flesh out the idea, and then the team went off and then we kind of pulled it together, which is beautiful. But part of me, my heart still called for me to be a painter. So I always try to be economical with my time. Gina and I used to take the train in from Westchester into New York City. And on the train, I was like, I can either sleep, which I did half the time, and when I wake up, I would read a book. But I got into these modes of like, I can think about painting all day. So when I come home and I paint, I'm economical with my painting. And every day I just came home, and at 9 o'clock, Gina would go to bed. I would just paint for 3 hours. And I began to build, it took the pressure off of like trying to figure it out and know exactly what you want to do. And then just being like, well, what the hell do I want to do? Like, if money's not part of it and I just want to paint, I don't know what to paint. I have to dig into me. I have to be self-reflective. And then I just started creating. And then I started to show in galleries, which again, once you get into a gallery, that doesn't mean you're going to sell in a gallery. I think I sold one painting over 2 years. And then I just positioned myself to have a body of work into another gallery. And then, you know, when you follow your bliss, I think, which I began to kind of look internally at what it is I wanted to paint, and then it began to come out in the right way. And ever since then, I've kind of followed it like a songbird through the woods. Like, it's not linear. It's not a paved road. I think even Van Gogh said, normality is a paved road, but no flowers grow on it. It's been this very non-linear, beautiful, just take it for a ride. I didn't set out to write books even. That just serendipitously kind of happened. Even teaching. Teaching happened because at Ralph Lauren, I would come home and paint, and then I think I got into a magazine and I won like honorable mention or something. And somebody had saw that I was pretty close to them and said, "Would you teach?" And I said I could. If you get 3 people, I would do it. And then it turned into like now I'm a teacher, you know? So there's a lot of interesting things. I think it goes back to the Schopenhauer quote. Like you don't know the people that you meet and how they're going to turn you into or push you, or even that you had it in you to do the thing until you're open and moving. So long-winded
Yeah.
answer, I guess.
Oh no, but it's great because it's windy. That's how it is. That's how life works. You don't really know what's gonna happen next. And actually the key the word that really came up for me when you were mentioning that is also like surrender.
Mhm.
And there's like surrendering control to an extent. We're like, okay, well, this is the only thing that I know I can handle with my
Mhm.
hands and I know that I can take care of, which is making my paintings and doing the things that are within your control. And then the moment that, opportunities arise, whether it's someone, hey, do you teach? Um, you have that ability to surrender to that opportunity and be like, oh, sure, why not? Right? There's that
Yeah.
openness, like you said, but then there's a bit of that surrender where it's like, okay, yeah, I surrender some control into the universe, into life to present these things to me. And then I'm sure that's how it happened with writing your books as well. Where you're like, maybe there's like I have enough stuff here where like I can write a book, or someone may have told you. I'm not sure how that happened, but I'm sure it was also a serendipitous opportunity that you were like, why not? You know?
Yeah. Do you want the story of that?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So I'm sure you know Ken Sellers, right? From
Sounds familiar. Yes.
PCA. He was
Yeah.
a landscape painter. So he was there at the same time I was, and Ken's a go-getter, and he's a wonderful magician. He's been on Jimmy Fallon, I think. He's been on TV. He like goes everywhere and performs for everybody. Shaquille O'Neal, and he's always like, "Yeah, dude, I just stole Shaquille O'Neal's watch," and I'm like, "He didn't beat you up? That's crazy." So Ken's a go-getter, and Ken got a book deal through Monticelli Press. But he knew that I was an illustrator and I worked in Photoshop, and he's like, I need somebody to help me. So I had just quit Ralph Lauren in 2016, and he was like, can you help me do the illustrations of the book? And I said, of course. I never say no to anybody. I'm always like, yeah, I guess I could do that. I guess I could
Hmm.
grow vegetables and make beer. I'll try it once, and if it's terrible, I'll just buy it because it's super cheap at the store. But so he came by and we worked. He was putting the book together, and he would be like, "Can you do this illustration?" I'd be like, "What are we trying to do here with the concept?" And he was like, "Well, you know what you're talking about." He's like, "You should write a book." And I said, "I mean, I guess I would if I was presented with the idea." And he said, you should do it." And I think just what happened is the right place, right time. Monticelli Press had a still life painter that was writing a book, and it wasn't working out, and they were looking for somebody to come in and write one. And Ken just called me up because he's like, "Call right now, call Victoria." And I said, "All right." And just again, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I just said like, "Hey, how's it going? I know Ken." He said, "You look for a still life book. I'd be willing to give it a shot." She said, "Have you written a book?" And I said, "No, but, whatever." And I said, "Let me do the sample chapter for you." And she gave me all the stuff to do. I think it was like Wednesday. And I said, "Okay, well, I'll get it to you by Monday. Is that all right?" And she's like, "Well, you don't have to get it back to me that fast." And I said, "Well, I will, just to get it off, not off my plate, but like to get it going."
Mhm.
And by Monday, I had sent it to her. And then I waited like 6 months for an answer, thinking like this isn't going to happen. And then my wife got pregnant, and I was like, well, I hope this book deal comes through sooner than later. And because my some we didn't know if we were having a boy or a girl, and I was like, I don't know, baby's on the way. It's due in December, and they got back to me in August, and they said, yeah, you got a book deal. And I was like, oh crap. So they said like, how much time do you want? I said, I don't even have. I'm going to claim ignorance here. I don't even know. And they said, can you get it to us by the end of the year, like 4 months? And I said, okay, sure. And that's what I did. Now, what happened was my daughter came out early. She we didn't know we were having a girl. She decided she wanted to come out on my wife's birthday, December 10th. Yeah, it was beautiful. My wife called me, told me that her water broke, and I was like, "Oh, great!" And then I called my mom, and I'm like, "Gina's water broke. Does that mean that the baby's on the way?" And she's like, "You're having a baby today." And I said, "It's Gina's birthday. Like, this is crazy."
Yeah.
I was born on my dad's birthday, so I was like, it's
Oh,
kind of weird.
oh, that's cool.
So what happened was at the end of the month, the baby came, and at the end of the month, I got an extension, so I got the book done in 5 months. But that's how it started. And then after
Mhm.
that, the first book, the pandemic started, and then I was like, crap, this is like the worst time. I had an opening for a show, which went terribly because, it was like it was the
Mhm.
week before everybody masked up, and it was for the artist still life. And then, now we went on lockdown, and then my Victoria called me and she said, your book sold out. And I was like, what? Yeah, which is bizarre because I knew my mom would buy one, but I didn't know if anybody else would. And I said, that's strange. And I think it was a function of like right place, right time with COVID. Everybody was buying books and doing things because they couldn't go out. And she said, this is the perfect time to do a follow-up book if you were considering doing another one. And I said, okay. So I did a second follow-up book, and now I've got that one's done really well. And now I've got two more books, which I always take a break in the middle. I always think like, probably I don't know if I want to do another one, and then I just need time, and then I do another one.
Amazing. Amazing.
Weird,
It's
right? 'Cause I
very,
never set out to write one.
yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things that life throws at you. And again, you either say nah or you say, why not? Right? It's that, some of the most wonderful things can happen from that why not. I mean, and you mentioned something that I think is also quite key, which is right place, right time, and then right preparation too, because you also were surrendering and open to attempting it in the first place. And then what do you have to lose? Maybe a little bit of time, but you
That's
gained
exactly it.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't have any time to give at the time. I
Oh,
was
yeah.
in Westchester driving to Boston once a week for to teach a class at Mass Art in Boston because the same cynicism I have for colleges and teaching the wrong thing was like, well, I'm going to go back and make a difference and be the change I want to see rather than just be cynical of it. And yeah, I drove back and forth. But again, I always find beauty and like, what's the positive of having downtime? What can I do with it that will help me with the book? Because just like in painting, I always say, go take a break. so you're not staring at it, and you'll come back right away and you'll know, you put 6 fingers on somebody, you don't see it in the middle of it unless you're painting the person from Princess Bride. But, so the whole thing was to on the drive up, what can I do? Well, I can think, and I can think through these things creatively. What are creative ways to kind of bat that around? I don't think that we allow enough time with social media and all these things to really have downtime. Allow the mind to take a hold of it and don't give it any other thing, and you will just be amazed at what it can do. So, I used to drive with a pen and a paper, and I would scribble these notes because sometimes I'm like, Eureka! And then I'd be like a 95, writing, scribbling things down. But then it's just like when you give your mind enough time, and then in the middle of the night you wake up and you know the answer. It's like that was the downtime I needed away from the book. And then I come right back in the next day. So yeah, it's a beautiful synthesis, a dance or a waltz between like the projects that I do and moving them around and allowing them enough time to come into fruition, and also taking the governor off my head that says you can't do a thing, because that's one of the biggest things I think that gets in the way. If you don't have that, you don't know what you can do in a short amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a couple things in there that you mentioned that are so, so, so important, because we, like you said, with social media, with the internet, with all these things, we are just endlessly entertained.
Mhm.
Which, okay, that's fun, sure. But then if you are trying to, stop and smell the roses, right? And live life and have like this outside sort of view of the world instead of always looking down into a phone, a little box, it does open you up to more of that creative problem solving. Like, yeah, okay, maybe the internet can give you some answers. Like if you have a specific question, like, oh, how can I, render this a little bit better? How can I imitate texture on an orange? Sure, the internet has answers. But if you're also actively trying to do it, or just going out, you're taking a walk, suddenly you'll also get hit with an idea for it, because you gave your brain the space and time and energy to expand itself a little bit and to breathe.
Mhm.
um and that's super important. But yeah, and a lot of that is introspection, which is something else that you mentioned. A lot of the things that we do as artists require introspection. If your goal is to paint better, if your goal is to paint something that means something to you, that fulfills you in some way, that takes a lot of what do I like, instead of, like for example, looking at social media and being, a victim of falling in love with too many different things. And then suddenly it's like, wait, but do I really want to do this, or do I just appreciate it? Because there's a balance, right? It's okay to like something and not do it. Um, you know?
Yeah, we talked about the Levittown behind you and how you love
Yes.
landscape, but you're
Yeah.
not interested in doing it. And
Yeah.
I think I have that same love too.
Yeah.
Or maybe I haven't come to loving it as much. I
Mm-hmm.
have done Ken does sunset paintings, and I
Mm-hmm.
thought, I don't know, I've never done one. Let's go do one, and we did it, and it was like it was a nightmare. He says it's like painting a speeding train, and I'm like, yeah, even faster. It's like the sun set, and I'm like grabbing my brush, and he's done. And I'm like talking about like the sketching part of like if you can't sketch really quick, you can't capture that sun, right? And people will just say, "Oh, take a photo." It's like that's fine, but you didn't experience it. Like if I take a photo of or if I look at a photo of the Eiffel Tower, that's different than standing under it and experiencing it. You know.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And that's another thing that I've mentioned actually in past episodes too, but it's, that's also part of the introspection. It's like, do I feel happy and comfortable and fulfilled when I paint really, really fast? Is
Mhm.
that something that I can conceivably see myself doing the rest of my life? Or am I trying to box myself into something just because I think it's more convenient, right? Because, yeah, it is convenient to have a high production rate as an artist because, oh, you could just take out a ton of paintings, and then if you're still focusing on growth, of course, then you're taking out tons of paintings that are progressively better, hopefully, and then you can send those to a gallery, and then, oh great, I have this good influx of cash. But then if you're a slow painter, you also have to take into account, right, oh well, I know this is how it works for me and this is how I like to do things. But then how can I also manage the economic side, which is, like the different income streams for artists, which you definitely have quite a few of them, right? You have like your Patreon, you have your book, you have your paintings themselves, you teach. Do you find that it's difficult to time manage all of those different income streams, or have you been able to find a good rhythm in there?
Yeah, I'll just say in regards to what you just said,
Yeah.
people should just be careful of the treadmills in which they're embarking on, because you may want to get off and you may not be able to, right? So, that's where you're just gonna be careful. And Hemingway even said you must be willing to write without an audience. And the creative act, Rick Rubin says that the audience comes last. If you're at the mercy of the audience and you're playing to it all the time, you're on that treadmill and you may not be able to get off it. So just be careful. And I've had to catch myself. I'm not just saying it to the audience. I'm saying it to myself, and reminding myself as a mantra that be careful. If you start this thing, do you want to continue? You know, and you may have to jump off. Um, I love to manage many projects. Back to your other question about the books and the teaching and stuff. I think what it does to me, and the positive that it brings, is that it allows for time away from a project. Somebody even like Malcolm Gladwell talks about it. I took the master class during COVID. I think everybody took it, or didn't take it, but watched all the videos. And he
Mhm.
was talking about something that I was like, yeah, that's what I do too, is like to take and create something and then take it away from you for a while and then come back with fresh eyes and see what you think about it. Oscillating or rotating between multiple projects allows me to kind of take that break. It's also why I used to garden. Get out of the studio, go see the sun, right? Um, but all of these things that just take us away. I don't think it's bad to go on Instagram. I think it's actually fun sometimes, and I love the memes some of my friends send.
Yes.
That seems like what all it is these days. But allow for enough time. What we do with my 6-year-old daughter is we allow for time, and then we put a timer on, and then we say like that's enough screen time. Now we're going to get away from it. We're going to do something else, because human nature is just to kind of go down that rabbit hole, and you could get stuck, and a day could go by or a week could go by and you watch Breaking Bad seasons 1 through 6 and you haven't done anything, and you're like, I feel like crap and I'm still in the same clothes that I was in on Monday and it's Friday. So just figure out, as you said, be introspective, finding out those rabbit holes that we get caught in, or our own um, things that we do, and then just try to put up a barrier so you don't get stuck in them, is what I'd say. So
Yeah.
I oscillate between projects. It allows for me to come back with fresh eyes and then critique myself as a different version of myself that could make it better.
Totally, totally. And what you mentioned about, rotating through these projects and, having time away from them, it's so funny because every painting, right? And I was mentioning this too. It's there's that saying that every painting is unfinished.
Mhm.
And I think also because we ourselves are works in progress.
Mhm.
So it's like a little snapshot of who we are in that moment,
Mhm.
and what we're knowledgeable of. So being able to rotate through projects, I don't know if this has happened to you, where you go back to that project and the thing that you thought you didn't get at that moment, you're like, ah, that's the problem that I was having. And I just couldn't see it because I hadn't grown through that dilemma yet. But thanks to rotating through the other projects, now I can see it, and now I can see where I hadn't quite grown enough to be able to meet that barrier and rake it through, right? So that personally,
Yeah.
that happens to me when I rotate between like painting, but then also I like knitting. So I have like 2 or 3 knitting projects at the same time. And then sometimes I might go back to one and be like, that's the thing that happened that went wrong, or oh, that's what I couldn't understand. And then suddenly I get a little bit upset because then I want to unravel all of it and start over, because now I can do it better. But it's the same with painting, we're like, oh man, I want to paint this all over again because I know how to do it even better this time, right? So I think that's really useful.
Yeah, I think Max Ginsburg, he's 93, I think now.
Mm.
And I think at like the age of 91, I had asked him, Max, why do you still paint from life? Why do you do portraits? Because he's just painting every day. And he said, I just feel like I'm getting better every day, you know? So I'd say that we have this ability. if you do get into the mode of like keep growing every single day and getting better, that yeah, you're going to see more than you saw last week. And I think Alan Watts is the one who said, you're not obliged to be the same person that you were 5 minutes ago. Lewis Carroll had something similar where he's talking about Alice in Wonderland. He says, I don't want to go back to yesterday because she comes back from going down the hole and she's like, because I'm not the same person that I was. So we should continue to evolve. If you're into growth daily, then yeah, it could happen in a day, it could happen in a week. There are definitely like demos and stuff like that where I think are just wonderful that I've done and they have died, or that's the life cycle of them, which was just to end them and not continue. But then there are even notes that I've left around unintentionally to myself to remind me either accidentally, consciously or unconsciously, of like, hey, look at what you can do if you let go a little bit and you're not painting from your head and from your heart. And it's just this equal balance always of introspection, study other people's, study my work, make sure that the direction that I want to go is where I want to go, but also, maybe you had something else and you've changed in a bad way or a good way. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's, the human condition, as they say. And I think that's really interesting too, because it kind of reminded me also of like what you were saying about like you took these opportunities without realizing that they would lead to something that would lead you here, right? To who you are at this moment and what you've done. And that's, that being open to that growth in the first place, right? Being aware and just receptive to it, because if you're not, like you said, you could change from one day to another, but you have to have that. I mean, sure, there are outside circumstances that will force you to grow, but then there are, the interior incentives of like, well, I've never written a book before, why not? Right? I have, the opportunity, and they're seeking the exact thing that I have, so why not? Right? You didn't say, oh no, I'm not going to do that. Because imagine what would have happened if you said, nah, I'm not going to do that. Like how, like that would have changed your entire life in one aspect, right? So
mhm.
it's, yeah, that openness is so important.
Yeah, for me, I'm just curious, always curious, and I have no problem with failing. Like if it sucks, you will forget, and another day will go by. And I think it started with sketching and sketchbooks and grabbing a pen and just acknowledging that that is you and where you are and you can't hide it. That's the pen mark you just made. You can make a choice to make it better, and it's going to come with a lot of time and energy. But flip the page. That happened. You cannot change it. And just accepting it one step at a time. And then if you look back at that sketchbook at the end, there was tremendous growth. It wasn't where I wanted to be, but it was documented growth to look from front to back and be like, wow, that's it's there. So
Yeah. Yeah. And this is something else that just reminded me of, which is that, and I like comparing life to a video game sometimes. But life is just like this open world exploration video game, like role playing game, and you can literally do anything, right? If you're open to it. It's like, oh, there's that path over there that leads somewhere new, and I have not tried that. I'm gonna go through there, right? And then suddenly, kind of like how someone asks you, like, oh, are you gonna join us for drawing dinner? You're like, what? Like suddenly there you are drawing with a bunch of people in the evenings. So it's, yeah, you just have
yeah, I
to.
think it gets dangerous, I think, when the treadmill is what you're on and then you're producing for the audience. And that's why I just say Instagram tends to be that in which you know, if you have to do that thing daily and you don't want to do it, you're there. But
Mhm.
if you're able to just create and not care and then say, that's a note, that's all it is. Like I was doing these palette knife paintings, talking about back to our conversation about painting from photography. Um,
Mhm.
I was, I was told at Water Street that we weren't supposed to paint from photographs, right? I was like, okay, I guess I forgot because I went home and I had all these photos of like sun setting and stuff. And I said, I don't know what all my brushes do. I don't know what some of these mediums do. I'm just going to do a palette knife painting. And I did. And then I just did a bunch of them. And I finished my grad school online like 2 years ago. and got my master's. And I was like, it was an opportunity to explore and play and not care, and then get some feedback on it. And it ended up being a facet of my business because now I show them up at a gallery up in Vermont, which I didn't intend to. I was more just out of curiosity saying, like, I can play with this medium. I don't know what coal wax does. Have I ever done a palette knife painting? No. But the governor on my head didn't say, you can't do that. It just said, well, I guess you didn't get the memo today that you couldn't do it. And then you just do it. And then afterwards, you could say, is this heading in the right direction or not? And sometimes it just takes like 10 more of them to have like introspection to say, even if I made one mark in the other paintings that could make this influenced, it served its purpose, you know? So when I go to like museums and I look at the work of artists that I'm not supposed to like the Franz Klein and a lot of these modern artists that are all mark making in color, that's what I'm looking at. I'm like, there are textural elements in like even a Bouguereau background painting that has palette knife in it that this is an extension of that we're just not looking at because we're myopically stuck over here. But I'm looking at like the rest of the museum and saying, is there any connection? There is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all art is derivative, right, of reality. And then, we we of course have the bold masters, and then that evolved into something else, and then camera happened, and that evolved into something else, right? It's inevitable. And now we have this open playing field where we can grab as many tools as we want from any toolbox we want and do whatever the heck we want. I mean, there's nothing to stop us. And like I love that you keep repeating, like, don't paint for the audience. Like, follow your own curiosity, follow your own motivation and desire to, hey, I wonder if you put this and this together, because that's where the magic happens. It isn't like, oh, I need to find my voice immediately so I can sell work because I want to be an artist. No, stop. Stop right there.
Yeah, I think Travis Schlott, Travis?
Yeah.
Was he? Yeah. So Travis had a great quote. He used to have it on his studio wall because I used to paint with him. I love Travis's work and I love the everything he combines into mark making and classical realism.
Mhm.
He had this quote and it said, do paintings you'd hang on your wall because they're probably going to end up there anyway. And the point of it is that you should be happy in the process of making it. It's not for like I'm sure you're like me, like whatever comes out of it at the end is great, and I hope the painting looks fantastic. At the same time, I really want to love the exploration and the journey in the middle. And I don't want to always exactly know what's going to happen. It's not it's not boiling it down to a formula from A to Z, and I just am taking from A and putting over. It's not a pixel that I just move from here and then I just take one piece at a time and put it over there. Anybody could do that. It's much more complex than that. It's a journey, it's an exploration. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. I'm going to take a risk. Maybe it may be a big one, depending on how I feel today, maybe a small one. Maybe I don't want to take a risk. I don't know. I don't take huge risks on commissions because I'm like, the stakes are much higher. But then if somebody's like, paint whatever you want, then I'm like, yeah, I'll take a risk on a commission. But the point of it is, it's a very romantic way, I think, of painting. I say I'm more like, uh, God, what's his name? Jim Carrey in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which linearly he was going into Manhattan on the train and he jumped onto the one to Long Island because his heart told him, even though he erased his mind to tell him not to do it, but he still followed his heart, you know? So there's like, I think, a romantic side in artists that we follow that as well. It's a balance for everybody. Some people paint more with their head. They just want it figured out. And they just want to pull from A to B. I don't particularly care. If
Yeah,
it floats your boat, it makes you happy.
exactly. Yeah, the I really love that quote by Travis, because I mean, come on, like, I do have paintings of mine that are hanging on the walls, and I'm like, well, at least I like them enough to put them there, and then the ones that I don't quite like, they're put away, of course. But yeah, it's true. You have to be the first person who likes your work, no matter
Yeah.
what. Yep.
And that's the thing too, is like sometimes when people come over and I have something hanging up and they don't, it doesn't mean anything. I'm like, it doesn't have to. I don't care. It's on my wall. Like I
Yeah.
choose. The other thing is like people should collect art if you're making art. you know, what are you looking at daily that you are admiring in the sense that you hope somebody admires your work? I think Hawthorne
Mhm.
said that. You don't find love in the thing that you're doing. How do you expect somebody else to? You know? So
Oh,
I have a bunch of paintings that I just stand before and they just twist my mind, you know, make me think differently. And it's beautiful to stand before them and look and go to museums all the time too. And
museums are key to that. If anyone can go out and, go to a museum, it's so important because there's nothing more awe-inspiring than, especially when I look at, like, for example, I was in Stockholm uh like 2 months ago, and I was in their one of the national museums there, and it was great because obviously they have like the Rubens paintings,
Mhm,
and close to the Rubens paintings you have the Van Dyck
mhm,
paintings, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the two dudes, right? Who one learned from the other, and now they're hanging together. And it's so, first of all, obviously their work is beautiful, their brushstrokes, their storytelling, their narrative, the economy of their brushstrokes. But then also just the beauty of being before paintings that have been hanging long after their creators have passed.
mhm,
It's very awe-inspiring, and it makes you also want to do your best with your work, because maybe one day your work eventually might end up in some random museum in a random country somewhere else, where other people will also be thinking the same thing, like, wow, that is amazing. And that's the cherry on top, right? We have to make work that we like first, and we have to do our best with ourselves and with our own special flavor that we want to give to the world. And then from there, everything kind of grows out. It's really funny how people try to see it backwards, where they want the after effects so bad that they'll work for those, not realizing that those are just collateral benefits of that introspection, that inner work, that work also on just being receptive and open to yourself and the own beauty that you see in the world.
mhm.
Yeah.
You have to love the process of what you're doing, and it can't be for the latter. And I think, not to, you know, Eckhart Tolle is a great one. Do you know Eckhart Tolle?
Yeah.
I mean, he begins his book by saying the sun will supernova. Like,
Yeah.
get over it. Like, what if my painting or your painting were in any of those California fires? It would be gone, right? So I hope at least you enjoyed the process of making it, right? Like, we have no control of what happens after it's made. Even if it goes to a museum, plenty of museums have been looted, plenty of them have burnt down. At the end of the day, we're here in this time. All we have is now. I hope you enjoy the process
Mhm.
of making that painting, and you're not just at the mercy of hoping that it gets you fame or something like that, you know? So
Yeah. Yep.
you can at least put it on your wall, right, Travis?
Yes. And as they actually, I think this is a quote from Gilderoy Lockhart, where he says, "Fame is a fickle friend."
Mm.
He probably pulled that from somewhere else too, but it's if you're painting for fame, I hope that you have powerful friends, because that's a lot easier. But if you're just like every other person out there who wants to be an artist, just do it because you love it. And I think most of us do, in fact, do it because we love it. So
Look
yeah,
at
and then
Van Gogh. Look at
yeah.
Van Gogh. I mean, Van Gogh sold one painting in his life,
Hmm.
and he was miserable. He found joy in painting. It's the only thing he found joy in. And
Yeah.
now, years later, he's like Van Gogh. Like, everybody looks at him as the expressive artist. And then you have somebody like Bouguereau, who was huge in his time, and then like you could buy his paintings for nothing, like 50 years ago. So it's like nobody's in control of any of this stuff. It fades, fads come and go, and our work should be created in the moment and enjoyed, at least by us.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, again, there's that right place, right time, and receptivity, and all of these, interesting ingredients that we can't always control that go into it. And that's basically life. And then do you have any advice for someone who wants to become a full-time artist? I know we've said a lot of really great advice now, but is there like one thing that you think they should really focus on?
Focus on making sure that you're doing it out of the love for it. I mean, a lot of the time I started by saying I like basketball, but basketball is kind of like the perfect example of it, like a sport. Now, I played high school basketball. I didn't play college. I played a little bit of college, by the way. And then from college goes into the pros, right? But if you were to look at each one of those facets, you could look at us as artists in high school as being you and I were probably the best artists in our high school, right?
Mhm.
From there, you're going to college and you're taking all the best high school artists and putting them in one space, right? From there, you can think about this, back to the sports analogy. Then you have all the best basketball players from each high school in college now. And NBA only drafts 60 players to go pro. And there's 128 teams or 64, I can't remember how many, in the final four. That's out of all of the colleges in the country. And each team has 15 players on it. And 60 of them are going to make it to the next game, and 30 of them come internationally. Now these keep funneling down into like you may be great here and then great here, and now you're getting into an atelier with all of the greats, and one may emerge. Even if you're the best in the atelier, that doesn't mean anything because all of this comes down to desire to keep going. And a lot of the time, I think I'm just the one that was passionate about this and just kept going and without a care of like making money because I can't not do it. It's a part of me. If you find art in that same way, you will probably make it because making it has nothing to do with financial making it. It's just like be tenacious. And if you have a passion for the thing, just keep going and do it for life. The beauty of this for me is that the basketball analogy, most professional artists are done at 40 unless you're LeBron James and you're still playing. So I don't have to be at the mercy of any physical limitations unless my arms don't work anymore. I can continue to grow. Like I said, Max Ginsburg at the age of 92, he still feels like he's getting better. It's a thing that can just keep adding to your life to study other things and bring in external, as you said, science or maybe whatever it is, piano music or sports. I don't know. The list, it's endless. You talk to all these artists, I'm sure they inspire you as well. You go home and you try out a different technique, or you heard of another artist that you hadn't heard of in the past, and now that's that little spark that pushed you this way. The same way, have that curiosity in everything that you do. You can learn how to just keep learning forever. It's a very rewarding career, or way of living, I should say, not so much career. Career sounds like it's always money driven, but yeah, that's my 2 cents. If you're into it and you like that and you're doing it all the time, don't worry, you're creative and an artist, and everybody has it in them. It's just whether or not we've beaten it out of them, telling them sets of rules that they have to like this or that. If you start to hear that, I think it's time to leave and then be introspective and find out what it is you want. That's what I did when I went to grad school because I lived in a little tiny apartment by myself, and then every day I just drew and then found out like what is it that I want to do. Nobody can tell me what that is, you know.
Yep, totally. That open world role playing game that we're in right now.
Yeah.
You could, yeah, there's nothing to stop you from, I don't know, hey, maybe I want to go skydiving tomorrow and just do that. Why not? Why not? If you have the means and you have the way to do it, do it.
What
It's
if
fine.
when you're skydiving, you look down and you're like, I want to paint from photos of aerial views of
Yeah,
the Hudson Valley, you
there you
know?
go.
And if nobody has told you that you can't paint from photography, you may make beautiful paintings. But if somebody has, and then you're trying to live to somebody else's shackles that they put on you, then you're at the mercy of them. And if you remove all shackles, the world's your oyster.
Yes, definitely. Oh man, it's really great advice. Um, and then of course, since you teach and you have wonderful books, where can people actually no, do you have any upcoming shows and upcoming exhibitions or any upcoming workshops that you'd like to promote?
Yeah, it's going to be, obviously it's May 2nd, 2025. So I'll just say that, and some of them will come and go, but May, I think 17th at the Guild of
Ooh.
Boston Artists. I'm a member. I'm doing an artist demonstration. It's free if anyone does want to go. Um, there's also a member show. that will be open if you're in the Boston area. I also show at Ray's Gallery in New York City. They have a show up now called Bloom. I have a painting in there. I teach at Lime Academy. They have a faculty show coming up, and I don't know. I'll probably think of something else after this that I forgot to mention. But yeah, just uh, I show up in Vermont at Bryan Gallery and also at Simi Marlis in Provincetown, and you know, plenty of paintings. Here's what I would say to the audience: go see art in person. That's the way it's meant to be. Instagram is fine. I get it for people that are kind of overseas or far, but like go see it in person. We're creating jewel-like things in which the interaction of light there's a human component to it. The scale of it, the way in which it's lit, the way in which we've created texture, all of these things that's the way it's intended. So go see it in person.
Totally. Yes. And then where can people see more of your work?
Yeah. So those galleries, but also toddcasey.faso.com. I have stuff on my website. I try to update it. I am on Instagram if anybody is interested. Facebook newsletter is better because with AI and image scraping, I don't know how I feel about it all.
Mhm.
So I'm usually less posting these days. But yeah, and then I'm on Patreon for anyone interested in videos of how-tos. There's plenty in the Artist Still Life, the Oil Painter's Color Handbook. There's even a cocktail book out. There's a whole story on that too, that I got the cocktail book and the color book within 2 weeks, because typically books, they say, they took 6 months to say yes. And I thought, all right, I got plenty of time to do the two books. Well, no, they came back within two
Oh
weeks
goodness.
and I had to navigate how to create the Oil Painter's Color Handbook and then do 32 paintings for that cocktail book. Um, no cocktail books on the brink, but yeah, two more books in the way. But the books are also, a good way to get my teaching and also take. I don't just put my paintings in my books. I could easily do that, but I'd rather be more like rising tide raises all boats. There are plenty of other artists out there that are doing fantastic work,
Yeah.
and I just like to show it and show my taste, and then also grab from museums and stuff like that. So it's actually a lot more work to do it that way, because I could easily just make it a Todd Casey book, but it's never my intention.
Yeah. Yeah, we stand on the shoulders of giants. I mean, a lot of us, especially when you study at the academies or illustration too, there are a lot of people that we've learned from, even inadvertently, because all of these processes get so carried down from person to person to person, and then it evolves, and then suddenly, like the academic style that we may have learned, or even the palette that we use, may have come from, I don't know, even like Van Eyck or something from way back when. Because it continues down the line. So yeah, it's totally great. And like you said, rising tide lifts all boats. We all have such different voices as artists that
Mhm.
it's inevitable that we're we should all appreciate each other, first of all, and then second of all, like I don't truly see other artists as competition for that reason, because we're all so different and we all have such different perspectives, so it's good to uplift everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
comparison is the thief of joy. So don't
Totally.
compare yourself. Just paint in bliss. At
Yeah.
least do it for yourself. At least you'll make one person happy, and that's the most important
Exactly.
one.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Todd, for this awesome conversation, all of these great golden nuggets of advice. I'm definitely inspired to go take a walk and then paint.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.